I had my way about it, they'd all be sent back to Russia or some other unpleasant place.
Everyone knew Robert Taylor and Clark Gable as MGM's Golden Boys. They shared the same studio, the same success, and even carried each other's caskets. But there was one moment that nearly destroyed their friendship forever. It happened during the war years when Hollywood stars were expected to serve their country. What Taylor witnessed that day made him lose all respect for the man everyone called King. The story stayed buried for decades because it would have destroyed Gable's reputation. But the truth about what really happened finally came out, and it changed everything people thought they knew. Spangler Arlington Brew was born on August 5, 1911, in the small farming community of Philly, Nebraska. The name alone became a challenge from the start. It came from his father, Spangler Andrew Brugg, a farmer who later became an osteopath. In school, teachers stumbled over the pronunciation and often called him Arlington or Arlie, just to avoid saying the whole thing. The German sound of it made life even harder during World War I. When anti-German feeling was high, children teased him, and he often felt like an outsider. His mother had chosen the name to honor a distant relative, but it only made her son's early years more difficult. Music was his first passion. At Beatrice High School, he became a skilled cellist, taking lessons in Lincoln from Professor Herbert E. Gray. Gray saw something extraordinary in him and pushed him toward a career in classical music. Taylor also dreamed about studying medicine like his father. He enrolled at Doane College in Crete, Nebraska, planning to follow a pre-medical path. For 2 summers, he performed in a musical trio on KMMJ radio in Clay Center, earning small amounts of money while perfecting his performance skills. Gray believed he had the talent to play with major orchestras, which made him furious when Taylor started acting in campus plays. He was also a star athlete. At Beatrice High School, he broke records in track and field and became a local hero in the late 1920s. His name appeared in newspapers not just in Beatrice, but in Lincoln and Omaha. He wasn't limited to one event. He excelled in several, proving he had natural coordination and determination. Colleges noticed, offering him scholarships. The discipline of early workouts, strict diets, and competitive focus stayed with him for life. That same physical skill would later make him perfect for the adventurous roles he became known for. The biggest turning point came when Professor Gray moved to California to teach at Pomona College. Taylor followed him in the early 1930s, a risky move for someone from a modest family. In California, he planned to keep studying music and medicine, seeing it as a temporary chapter before returning home. But Gray encouraged him to experience everything college had to offer, and that included the theater group. His striking looks and natural stage presence were impossible to ignore. Soon he was performing in plays, even though Gray worried it would take him away from music. In 1932, while playing Captain Stanhope in a Pomona College production of Journey's End, Taylor caught the attention of an MGM talent scout. The scout offered him a contract starting at $35 per week. It was a small start, but it would grow into one of the most successful careers in Hollywood. When MGM took control of his image, the first thing they did was erase his birth name. Spangler Arlington Brew was gone, replaced with Robert Taylor. Louis B. Mayer and Ida Coverman made the decision without asking him. They said the new name was stronger, more American, and would sell more tickets. For Taylor, it was the beginning of losing pieces of himself. He later wondered if anything of the boy from Nebraska was still there. His looks brought him fame, but also trouble. His perfectly balanced features, blue eyes, and athletic build made him almost too handsome. Male audiences dismissed him as too pretty, and rumors about his personal life began to circulate. MGM put him in roles opposite older, powerful women like Greta Garbo and Barbara Stanwyck, which only fueled gossip. Taylor disliked the image, feeling it trapped him. He wanted to be respected for his acting, not just his face. MGM decided to change his image. They cast him in tougher roles like Billy the Kid and The Crowd Roars. The makeup department worked to make his features look rougher. Publicity photos showed him in rugged situations, shirtless, sweating, and often in bathing scenes. They even trained him to walk, talk, and move differently. The goal was to make him look like a tough man, but in some ways, it made his image seem even more artificial. By the late 1930s, His salary had grown to $5,000 a week, up from the $35 he earned at the start. But it came with strings. His contract with MGM lasted 25 years, longer than any other star at the time. The studio decided every role he played, shifting him from romantic lead to action hero to Western star as they pleased. He never refused a role. Industry insiders said he was so loyal to MGM that it sometimes made him dull to the press. He also had to answer not just to the studio, but to his wife, which left little space for personal freedom. His breakout came in 1936 with Camille, where he starred opposite Greta Garbo. He played Armand, the young man in love with her tragic character Marguerite. Critics praised him, noting that he was better than expected in such a demanding role. The film earned $2,942,000 and proved he could act with depth. Garbo initially found him inexperienced, but she grew to respect his dedication. Camille became one of the great romantic films of its time, and finally showed audiences that Robert Taylor was more than just a pretty face. When Barbara Stanwyck married Robert Taylor on May 14, 1939, Hollywood could not stop talking. The age gap was only 3 years, but at that time it was enough to spark whispers across every studio lot. Barbara was 31, an age that the industry often called old for a leading lady. Taylor was 28, the handsome small-town boy from Nebraska who had become MGM's perfect heartthrob. Barbara had already been married once, owned her own ranch, and was known as a strong, independent star. Taylor, by comparison, was still learning the ways of Hollywood. The talk wasn't just about their ages, it was about who held the power. People joked that she was robbing the cradle. Some even called her a mother figure to him. She made far more money than he did, and had built her reputation through daring films like Babyface. The relationship flipped the usual roles, and that made it irresistible gossip at every party in town. The wedding itself was pure Hollywood theater. MGM boss Louis B. Mayer didn't simply encourage the match. He ordered it. He told Taylor he would have to marry her, then oversaw every step of the event. They were so superstitious about the number 13 that they waited until just after midnight to exchange vows in San Diego. They used their real names, Ruby Catherine Stevens and Spangler Arlington Brugge, to keep things quiet. Marion Marks, wife of Zeppo Marks, and the same woman who had arranged their blind date, stood as matron of honor. Taylor's own family was absent, replaced by a studio-approved best man. It wasn't love that drove the day. It was damage control. MGM needed a perfect heterosexual marriage to quiet rumors about both stars. Mayer even gathered reporters in Beverly Hills just to announce it. The entire affair felt staged, and insiders privately laughed at how obvious the studio's plan had been. 7 years before she married Taylor, Barbara had adopted a boy named Anthony Dion Fay on February 5, 1932. She had hoped a child might save her troubled marriage to her first husband, Frank Fay. When the marriage collapsed, she kept custody of Tony but never developed a bond with him. Her own childhood abandonment had left deep scars, and she seemed unable to show him warmth. When Taylor joined the family, Tony was only 7. The boy now had a stepfather who barely noticed him, and a mother who treated him like an unwelcome guest. She kept his photo hidden in her closet and avoided speaking about him at all. As he grew older, the distance became permanent. Even when he tried to visit her on her deathbed, she refused to see him. Her brother told Tony to forget she had ever been his mother. She left him nothing in her will. Tony died in 2006, still wishing for a connection that never came. Taylor's own behavior brought its share of scandals. In 1941, while filming Johnny Eager, he began an affair with Lana Turner. He bragged to friends that he was obsessed with her and had to be with her, even if it was only once. When Barbara found out, the shock was so intense that she reportedly attempted suicide. But this was just one in a line of betrayals. In 1950, while filming Quo Vadis in Rome, Taylor openly pursued Lea De Leo, an Italian extra. He was photographed leaving brothels and didn't bother hiding their relationship. The humiliation for Barbara was enormous. It seemed as if Taylor wanted to push her into asking for a divorce. She flew to Rome to confront him, and for 6 weeks they played the part of a happy couple for cameras while quietly negotiating the end of their marriage. When she finally offered him the divorce, she was stunned when he agreed without hesitation. She realized then that his affairs had been a calculated way to make her let go. In February 1943, Taylor made a choice that surprised everyone. At 32, he was far too old for the draft. He was married, valuable to the war effort at home, and had every legal reason to avoid service. Studios preferred their stars to stay stateside, sell war bonds, and appear in patriotic films. But on February 9, 1943, Taylor enlisted in the U.S. Naval Air Corps under his real name. He only delayed long enough to finish filming Song of Russia, then reported for duty in August. The Navy welcomed him but quickly decided he was too old for combat. He became a lieutenant junior grade and was assigned to train pilots instead of fighting overseas. It stung. He had wanted to serve on the front lines, but his orders kept him stateside. Still, he proved to be one of the best in his class, earning his wings on January 11, 1944, and finishing 5th in instructor training. His most lasting impact came through the 17 Navy training films he made between 1943 and 1945. These weren't simple propaganda reels. They were carefully crafted teaching tools that covered everything from flight basics to combat techniques. One film, Flight Sense, taught pilots how to handle the Stearman N2S biplane. He even added humor to keep the lessons engaging. His narration of the 1944 documentary The Fighting Lady was widely praised, especially by the New York Times. What made this work even more remarkable was that Taylor had never flown a military plane before enlisting. He started at zero, trained intensively in New Orleans, and mastered both flying and teaching. At the Naval Air Station in Livermore, California, he became known for explaining complex concepts in simple, clear ways that stuck with his students. In February 1951, Barbara Stanwyck walked into court and filed for divorce from Robert Taylor, ending what had been seen as one of Hollywood's most solid marriages. They had been together for 12 years. The move stunned the industry, because it began as a bluff. While Taylor was filming Quo Vadis in Rome in 1950, he started a very public romance with Italian actress Lea DeLeo. Stanwyck flew to confront him and threatened divorce, hoping it would make him come back to her. Instead, he agreed without hesitation. The financial terms were punishing for him. She was awarded 15% of his gross earnings until she remarried or died. She never remarried and collected every cent. She also kept full custody of her adopted son, Tony Dion, cutting Taylor out of the boy's life completely. That same year, Taylor took a role that changed his career forever. Westward, The Women was a $2.2 million Western directed by William A. Wellman. It told the story of a wagon master leading 150 women from Chicago to California to marry settlers. The film grossed nearly $4 million worldwide and proved he could do more than play handsome romantic leads. His character was tough and decisive, far removed from the glossy roles he had played before. The film resonated in unexpected ways. Decades later, a Spanish village inspired by the movie arranged its own caravan of women, leading to 33 marriages. In the same year, he returned to Rome for Quo Vadis, MGM's most expensive film to date. It had a staggering 32,000 costumes and even featured a young Sophia Loren as an extra. Taylor played Marcus Vinicius, opposite Deborah Kerr. The film earned $11,143 million in the United States and Canada, plus $9,194 million overseas, pulling MGM out of financial trouble. It became the highest-grossing film of 1951 and confirmed Taylor as more than just a romantic figure. His relationship with MGM, however, was complicated. He had been under contract since 1933, making him the last major star from the studio's golden age to still be tied to such a deal by the late 1950s. For years, studio boss Louis B. Mayer kept his salary lower than other big names, playing on Taylor's loyalty and gratitude. By the mid-1950s, Taylor began focusing on westerns, his favorite genre. When his contract ended in 1958, he started Robert Taylor Productions and starred in The Detectives from 1959 to 1962. MGM still found ways to use him, calling him back for the 1963 Western Cattle King. Taylor's path crossed with a young Elizabeth Taylor in 1949's Conspirator. She was just 16, and the age gap was so obvious, some thought they looked like father and daughter on screen. He treated her kindly, helping with her studies and praising her talent. They reunited for Ivanhoe in 1952, a film she didn't enjoy, but that became one of MGM's top earners, pulling in $11 million in rentals. In 1952, MGM arranged a meeting between Taylor and German actress Ursula Thies. They met at the Coconut Grove. She later recalled feeling like she was in seventh heaven when he took her to the dance floor. But Taylor, still wary from his divorce, dated others, even his ex-wife. Ursula finally gave him an ultimatum, and they married on May 23, 1954, in a small ceremony on a boat in Wyoming. With Ursula came 2 children from her previous marriage, Manuela and Michael, both shaped by the hardships of war-torn Germany. Adjusting to life in Hollywood was difficult for them, especially under Taylor's strict expectations. Michael's troubles grew over time, leading to a shocking event in 1964 when, at 18, he tried to poison his biological father, George Thies. He was convicted and sent to a reformatory for a year. Taylor and Ursula later had 2 children of their own, son Terrence in 1955 and daughter Tessa in 1959. They built a warm home on a ranch in the San Fernando Valley. Friends described them as an affectionate couple. Tessa remembered her father as playful and loving, not the stoic figure people saw on screen. Robert Taylor took a risk in 1959 that many Hollywood stars would have avoided. He stepped into television at a time when most actors thought it was beneath them. The move shocked his peers, yet his series, The Detectives, proved him right. It began as a 30-minute crime drama on ABC and ran for 2 seasons before switching to NBC, expanding to a full hour and being retitled Robert Taylor's Detectives. Across its 97 episodes, Taylor played Captain Matt Holbrook, a sharp and determined leader of an elite police unit. The show drew in future names like Adam West, years before Batman, and even had scripts from Gene Roddenberry, who would go on to create Star Trek. For a movie star of his stature, this wasn't just a new role, it was a bold step into a changing industry. By 1966, another unusual opportunity appeared. Ronald Reagan, a close friend, was leaving Death Valley days to run for governor. Taylor replaced him as both host and occasional actor. Taking over from a man who would become president gave the show a strange blend of Hollywood and politics. Reagan and Taylor's friendship went back decades, and when Taylor died, it was Reagan who delivered the eulogy. Taylor's run kept the series strong and showed his deep commitment to television at a time when few film stars embraced it so fully. 8 years earlier, in 1958, Taylor had walked away from MGM. This was no ordinary exit. His contract had lasted 24 years, the longest in Hollywood history, starting in 1934 when he was just 23. His first pay was only $35 a week. By 1940, he was making $5,000 a week, working with legends like Greta Garbo, Clark Gable, Spencer Tracy, and Elizabeth Taylor. He appeared in over 80 films before leaving. The move marked the end of an era when actors stayed loyal to a single studio for life. After MGM, the work was steady, but often disappointing. Taylor later admitted he wasn't proud of some of the films he made during this period. The big studio roles were gone, and now he took what was available. There were still moments of quality, like his final MGM film Party Girl in 1958, but the change was clear. Without the studio's support, he had to adapt. That shift pushed him deeper into television, where The Detectives became a defining role. Behind the scenes, a lifelong habit was already taking its toll. Taylor had smoked since boyhood, 3 packs a day, more than 60 cigarettes daily for decades. By spring 1968, at 57, he began to feel winded and tired. He thought it was just age or overwork, but the breathlessness kept getting worse. When he finally sought medical help, the truth was devastating. It was lung cancer, almost certainly caused by his heavy smoking. At first, the public was told he had valley fever, but Taylor confirmed the truth himself, saying in a calm voice, "Oh, sure, it's cancer all right, lung cancer." He went through cobalt radiation and later major surgery to remove his right lung on October 8, 1968. Astonishingly, he kept smoking until just before the operation. Even after the diagnosis, his addiction still had a hold on him. Incredibly, he kept working. Death Valley days remained his focus. While Ronald Reagan's career turned toward politics, Taylor was fighting for his life while still appearing on screen. Between hospital stays and treatments, he filmed as much as he could, even acting in episodes. The strength he showed during this period was remarkable, though it came at great physical cost. Then, in May 1969, tragedy struck the family again. Taylor's stepson, Michael Thies, just 23, died from a drug overdose in his Los Angeles apartment. This happened only 2 weeks before Taylor's own death. Michael was the son of Taylor's wife, Ursula Thies, from her earlier marriage, but Taylor had treated him like his own. The double loss was devastating. Michael and Taylor were laid to rest side by side. On June 8, 1969, at 10:30 in the morning, Robert Taylor died at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. He was 57. Ursula was there in his final moments. It was a far cry from his glamorous MGM days, when he was earning the equivalent of over $50,000 a week and living on a 113-acre ranch with horses and cattle. His 35-year career had included over 70 films and 2 major television hits. With his death, one of the last true stars of Hollywood's golden age was gone. Ronald Reagan stood at the front of the Church of the Recessional on June 11, 1969. His voice catching as he spoke. The man who would one day become president struggled to keep his composure as he said goodbye to his friend Robert Taylor. Reagan called him more than a pretty face. He spoke of a man who respected his craft, who mastered it, and who carried himself with quiet dignity. The moment was so powerful that the audio now rests in the Reagan Presidential Library, a preserved piece of California's political and Hollywood history. Their friendship had been forged in the conservative circles of old Hollywood, and that bond carried into Reagan's political life. In his tribute, Reagan painted Taylor as the very embodiment of Midwestern integrity, a man whose passing left a hole in an industry already losing its old guard. Taylor had once been there for another legend. On November 19, 1960, he walked alongside Spencer Tracy and James Stewart to carry Clark Gable's casket into the same church where he would one day be mourned. The funeral was formal, military honors included, and tightly guarded. It was a rare gathering of MGM's brightest, men who had competed for roles yet respected one another deeply. Taylor's selection as a pallbearer showed the esteem Gable had for him, recognizing a career that had mirrored his own journey from romantic lead to rugged hero. When Taylor died on June 8, 1969, at just 57, it felt like the curtain closing on an entire era. His 24 years under contract at MGM was a record that would never be matched, spanning from 1934 to 1958. He had outlasted titans like Gable, Tracy, Katharine Hepburn, and Joan Crawford, watching the studio system rise and crumble. By the time he was gone, the industry was shifting toward the new director-driven wave of Hollywood. His death was not just the loss of a man, but the fading of a system that had built stars from the ground up. The blow was even heavier for his wife, Ursula Thies. Just 2 weeks earlier, on May 26th, she had found her son Michael dead from a drug overdose. He was 24. Michael had lived a troubled life, even serving time for trying to poison his own father. Ursula never told Taylor, who was already losing his battle with lung cancer. She planned both funerals alone, holding herself together for her surviving children. Taylor and Michael now rest side by side, a quiet reminder of the family's twin tragedies. For all his fame as the man with the perfect profile, Taylor carried a private storm of insecurities. He obsessed over his clothes, once telling Louise Rayner that his greatest dream was to own 10 perfectly tailored suits. He believed they could make up for what he saw as a lack of acting skill. In truth, he was always chasing roles that would prove he was more than just a handsome face. In 1941, he began breaking away from the leading man mold with darker roles like Billy the Kid and Johnny Eager. Even so, he often brushed off his success, calling acting the easiest job in the world and crediting luck over talent. His wartime service showed another side entirely. At 32, he joined the Naval Air Corps, eager for combat duty, but was told he was too old for overseas service. Instead, he poured his energy into directing 17 Navy training films, working as a flight instructor and narrating the combat documentary The Fighting Lady. He wanted danger, but Hollywood's protective hand kept him stateside. Even after the war, he threw himself into political causes, co-founding the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals and testifying before Congress against suspected communists. The stance cost him financially when his films were banned in parts of Europe, but he refused to bend. Despite the rumors and politics that swirled around him, Taylor valued loyalty above all. His friendship with Jack Benny endured for decades, and he remained close to Reagan. Even his ex-wife, Barbara Stanwyck, who received a share of his earnings after their divorce, came to his funeral. He kept strong working ties with directors he trusted and maintained friendships with people whose politics opposed his own, including Humphrey Bogart. In his later years, he took over hosting Death Valley Days from Reagan, proof that for Robert Taylor, personal bonds meant more than professional convenience.